session to order, November 12th, 2014. Have a roll call, please.
David Henry,
Here.
William Christmas,
Here.
Oscar Palacios, Paul Figueroa,
Here.
and Marika Choma.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. You'll rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, are there any comments on the agenda? Otherwise written? Any references or,
You need 30 seconds here. Commissioner Christmas and I were just discussing the sequence of events that led to the election of the new officers, and I actually can't even find it here now. I think it's all water under the bridge and not worth going. So,
are you talking about the agenda or are you talking about the minutes?
meeting minutes, sorry.
I'm discussing the order of the agenda.
Oh, the order of the agenda.
Proceed, I'm sorry.
Move for approval of the agenda.
Give a second.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, we're, item 5, we'll be asking for the approval of the minutes of September 10th. September. First half of October,
No meeting.
no meeting. That'll explain it, okay. Any comments?
No.
No. Well, okay, you thought that we elected officers and that was left out?
No, let's move on, Oscar. I'm sorry I brought it up. It's very, very minor, and I can't even find where it is, so let's move on.
So, more reason, okay. All right. Any comments? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval of minutes September 10th, 2014.
I second that approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Actually, well, citizens forum. Citizens wishing to speak shall limit their comments to 5 minutes or less at the chairman's discretion. No action may be taken. If there's anybody in the public that, or, I don't know, staff really, in the public that would like to make any comments that's not on the agenda. Okay. We'll then proceed to item 7, which is matters from staff. Do you present the first project? Please.
Okay, 109 Quesnel, there was a wall that was put up, actually, there was a building permit for the wall. There was, the portal, or the pergola, I think is what they called it, that was put up after, and I believe, the applicants are here to give a presentation on that.
Okay. You introduce him, I have him come up.
Mark and Molly Cottle.
Okay. Would you like to speak about the project?
Sure.
Take up your microphone.
was said is that the Ramada was put up during the time that we're putting up the wall, not afterwards. It was during the time.
Okay, was there a permit for that?
No, there was not. Y'all have the timeline? Y'all given the timeline?
There is a package.
Oh, the package?
We have an extensive packet.
This has a short.
Am I supposed to spell this one? I'm supposed to spell it.
You have the cover letter?
Me too.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And, you know, the connection to the project.
Mr. Carl, if I may regret, part of the formality is that you would state your name and swear to tell the truth.
Okay. My name is Mark Cottle, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Okay. So, going back, is that the Ramada was put up during the same time, and yet, as you'll notice in the photographs, that it was during the same time of construction as the walls put up. So, anyway, my wife and I, we're very, very sensitive to historical preservation. Actually, she has a building in Hillsboro, Texas, that's built in the late 1800s, and it's on the historical map. And so we're very, very interested in preserving the integrity of the Pueblo Spanish-style architecture. My background is architecture, and so it's there again, like I said, we're very sensitive to it. So that's the reason whenever we started put up the wall, because the fence that we had up, and I'm sure y'all passed down Quesnel, but the fence, it had two big posts that went up and then a big beam that went over. Well, it was rotting, and before it fell down, we wanted to do something that didn't want to fall on one of my grandkids. And also, the Ramada was, it was shaking. Anytime a big wind would come, it would shake, and so we wanted to replace it. So what we did was that we decided on a design that would, meet the Pueblo Spanish style architecture, and we submitted that to the planning and zoning, and I think that I actually started working on it in May, and I went to planning and zoning, and I understand they've had some turnover there. The person I talked to was not Diana, and honestly, I don't know who I talked to. And I told him, I said, I'm putting up a pumice wall. We've decided on pumice, and I understand that I have to get an engineering stamp on it, and have to submit it through the proper channels. And I also said that we're taking down the old Ramada, and I was calling it a portalis, not a portalis Ramada or gazebo. I don't know what really the right word is. And the lady at the time said, well, you're taking it down and you're putting a new one up, so therefore you don't have to have a building permit. I said, fine. I said, it's just as simple for me to send it through. I said, I've got the drawings. In fact, you've got the drawing. The engineering, well, it's a structural drawing of the Ramada. And I said, it's just as easy for me to send it through with the other one as it is this one. She said, no, no reason to. But since the wall is over 6 feet tall and it's of a different construction, and it's not of adobe, then you have to, submit it. So that's what I did. Went and got an engineering stamp, came back, and then submitted it. And actually, all she gave me was a building permit to fill out, as you'll see on 6/6. And then during this month, it was submitted to the planning and zoning, and actually it was Diana that called me back and said, well, I've talked to the I guess the town manager, is that who it'd be that approves it?
No,
Yeah,
yes.
that approves it. And it's been approved, but you gotta do an administrative permit. And so I said, okay. And I think there was another $75, something like that. I said, that's fine, I'll be back in Taos, beginning of July. And so I went in, I paid that, and that was really that. And then I picked up the permit, and on the beginning of August, because we were gonna stay here for a month, I wanted to make sure that I was here and it was done right and proper and that everything was followed to what, the way I wanted it done, as far as the structure, because you put something up like that, I don't want it falling down. So as you can see, as the timeline is that, and I know that there's some oversight that went into do you want me to go through the timeline? I guess that's the question.
You're doing fine, keep going,
Okay.
please.
Or if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them now.
Sure, thank you.
So as you can see, the first, and I'm sure it was just an oversight, but the inspector, as you can see on 8-1, this right there is a copy of the inspection. Signed off on 8-1 on the foundation or the footings. And then on 8-4, we began the demolition of the old fence and the footings. So I don't know where it came up with 8-1. I'm sure it was an oversight. But we all went into town, and the construction hadn't even begun on 8-1. So, you know, like I said, I'm sure it's an oversight on his part. We go to, as you can see on 8-5, the layout of the Ramada is there, okay? And we hadn't even torn the fence down. You see, I guess it'd be on the north side of the street. It's the street along Quesnel, is that the wall that we're actually going to be taking down in building the Pumas wall in its place. But anyway, we had the actual Ramada formed. So that's the reason I said, you know, the Ramada was the same time of construction.
Do you happen to have copies of the drawings that were intended to be submitted for the Amala?
Actually, you've got them in your packet.
They were submitted as 8.5 by 11 inches. These are the, when were those submitted?
Well, they were completed. I did them the same time I did the wall. And I showed the lady at the desk, I said, I can submit these at the same time. And she said, there's really not a need, because you're taking down and putting back up. Oh. So,
Okay, I see it.
okay,
Yeah, thank you.
so, I mean, I was ready there. In fact, I even paid for the whole thing up front, and because I was just trying to get it done so I could get my permit and get everything lined up. So I didn't include the Ramada and the wall all together on the building permit cost. Okay?
Do we have, does staff have the record of who it was that gave that information and who it was that signed the permit, or, you know, each phase of it?
As far as the person that he's referring to, we don't know who that person is. As far as the building permit, Mauro Rosales, our chief building official, he signed off on the permit. And as far as the administrative permit, Ms. Martha Perkins is the one that signed off on that, the administrative permit.
So as you can see, on 8-6, then we start tearing out the existing wall. And on 8/8, we start doing the forming for the foundation.
Well, I see a page here, application for administrative permit, and I can see on page 2 that this was signed by Martha Perkins, submittal certification, on June 6, 2014. And does that ring a bell? Is that who you might have spoken with that gave you guidance with the project?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. So, from my understanding, there was Martha that
Right.
was the lady, and I didn't think it was really necessary for me to get a name at the time. The lady I
No,
talked
that's
to
all right.
seemed
It's,
very knowledgeable in what she was doing.
Interesting. What is fascinating to me is that this would be the first time that I heard of in recent times where we can call it a remodel, actually this is a rebuild. This was not just a maintenance of what was there, but it was a taking down and a reconstruction of it. I have no idea how it is, and we may never know now, maybe it was a transitional time during the staff period, how this was not brought up before the Historical Preservation Commission, how this was not mentioned as a necessary part of the project. So the project is now what it is, and it's completed,
Mhm.
and we understand that, and that's what we have now. And, but I think that's, even to this moment, that we really don't have any more information as to how that occurred is just fascinating to me. I have no idea, but no one else seems to have an idea either. I would love some clarification on that. So, because what really should have happened is that you should have been told that if you were maintaining something that was there, or if you were restoring something that was there without a change to it, without rebuilding and putting a whole other version of it there, that you would have to go before the Historical Preservation Commission for review as to, with photographs, with plans and so forth, as to how you wish to proceed. And then from there on, we work together with planning and zoning to continue down the line. So I don't know if there was a misunderstanding, but this is a good moment to talk about this. I don't know if there was a misunderstanding in the difference between repair and replace.
No, I was quite clear to them that I was replacing it. I was taking it down, because as you can see, I don't know if you have a copy of the permit, but the original permit on the wall, but that is brand new wall going up. There's not any, I mean, the ones that was before was, I guess you call it a coyote fence, and it was coming down. There wasn't any question what was happening.
And you felt that Martha was aware of that, and she gave the admin.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Amazing.
Well, then I don't think that's much.
I'd just like to say we're here.
I don't know that there's anything more that we can do.
No, I'm a neighbor, and I watched your project go up. And it certainly needed, some help. It was, behind it. What has just been said is that what went up was not very much like what was there. I mean, the new gate or wall is much, much larger and bigger, and it just sort of happened. And I commend you on your documentation, and your presentation is very detailed. And so we see that it got kind of lost in the cracks of the transition, actually, of this group here. And so I agree, there's nothing.
I mean, I don't know if we need to go further or not, but I mean, actually, when I called for there's a couple times during when I guess the planning and zoning was going through some change, I was calling for an inspection. And the lady who was answering the phone, again, it was not Dinah, it was somebody else, and I said, I need an inspection tomorrow at such and such time. Well, on the permit, it says you have to allow 24 hours, I believe. And so that's what I do. And then nobody showed. And so I called back and I go, I called you for an inspection. You know, I didn't want to make anybody mad, didn't want to upset anybody, but I said, I got 5 or 10 yards of Pumas Creek coming. And I said, I need somebody out here. Well, they said, okay, I'll call him tomorrow. I said, all right, okay. And he'd get out there and inspect it, okay? But I think the thing that really caught me by surprise is that, you know, whenever, I mean, it's clear by the first photographs that we're putting up a portal or a ramada. I mean, we poured 10-inch diameter piers, 36 inches deep, with steel sticking up. And when I was asked to call for the final inspection, when Monroe came out, and he said, we've got a problem. I go, what kind of problem do we have? I said, you've been here for the last 5 weeks. I said, what kind of problem can we possibly have? He said, well, you don't have a building permit on the Ramada. I said, y'all told me I didn't have to have one. And I said, but when you were here, we showed you what we were doing. We walked you back here and we said, here's what's going on. He said, well, I thought you were pouring a slab. I go, with 5 10-inch piers that are going 36 inches deep for a slab? I said, we're never going to be pouring a slab. In fact, there's not a slab there now. It's flagstone.
Well, you know, there are a few things that I think this, again, it's unfortunate that you went through this experience, and that, for instance, maybe the value that will come out of this is this discussion, that we don't have this type of thing happen again. I'm seeing here on the building permit applications, you know, the explanation was replace wood fence with pumice fence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not a pumice fence.
I'm sorry?
It's not a pumice fence. It's a pumice wall. It's massive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pumice entrance gateway. It's not a pumice fence.
Mm-hmm.
It also seems as if in some of the descriptions that there might have been a misunderstanding, which is why we have that process in place, so that when we call a ramada or a pergola a portal, we know by the time that you come with your drawings what it is exactly you have in mind, and whether it's in fact a portal or a ramada. And these things got missed here. Just bear with me for one moment, because there is something I wish to say about this situation here. About 20 years ago, I was in this room with regard to a building that I completely redone in the historical overlay. I was here with other applicants. There was an applicant before me who had a building right on Taos Plaza, 2nd story, and needed to redo a porch patio. She wanted to do an absolutely marvelous improvement on that building. Absolutely gorgeous vigas, gorgeous corbels, and so forth. And there was some significant money. And for her involved, and for her, this was an improvement. Now, in those days, a good 20 or so years back, when there were significant replacements on existing buildings, this was chosen to go down to Santa Fe, and Santa Fe made the decision at that time. And it did. Went down to Santa Fe, and I watched that process. And I had to be back at the very next session because my little project was moving along. Well, here was the thing that happened. Santa Fe saw these marvelous plans and said, no, you can't do that. it can't be that ornate. Those vigas can't be that beefy. They can't be that improved for this time period because it's absolutely out of sync with when that building was built and that time period. There was no money at that time. The architecture was far simpler. And as a result, it was about craftsmanship down home here and very, very simple. And they made her strip it down to half of what she had planned to do. But it was in keeping. And it was a huge lesson for me from that day forward. And the lesson in that was that what we consider to be a certain architecture, and we're improving upon it because now 60, 80, 90 years later, there's more money, we can embellish better and so forth and so on. That is exactly the way in which, in tiny little increments, the inherent initial character of that area and that neighborhood becomes lost. When I will be honest with you, when I first saw your pumice wall, that was a pumice entry gate that would not have been in line with the time period of the building that is behind it, because it is far simpler, far simpler. You did have two sticks with a stick top. That was your gateway. There was a reason for that, okay? Maybe that's all that people could afford, but that is what informs the character and inherent nature of the neighborhood. And when that is replaced with a large wall, and it's impressive and it's fabulous, and you expect it, some palacio behind there, excuse my, that has now changed the facade and the street and the character. The same with the Ramada. We could really refer to that as these little sticks that were over the top, and these four little sticks, and it was the simplest thing. What has been done as a replacement is not reflective of that. It's a rebuild that's far beefier, far fancier, and we've lost that Ramada. We've lost that simple entrance that was there. It's changed the street. It's changed the inherent character. So there are two things to look at when we say we're improving something. And, our first desire is to run and do bigger, better, beefier, and more fabulous. But the chances are that had this come before the Historical Preservation Commission, I cannot speak for my other, my colleagues, that would have been a real discussion at that time. And I still want to put that out for whatever projects you might feel that you wish to do in the future. That lesson over 20 years ago, that was a lesson for me, still stands. Because that's how, in tiny increments, we, bit by bit, lose the original inherent character of a neighborhood and a historic area via these well-intentioned improvements.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. And that's the reason, actually, in the building permit, as you'll see, the structural design, where it calls the width of the wall, the size of the wall, and when it was sent, she's got a copy of the permit, and y'all have a copy of the original permit? So, that's the reason I did it 2 months prior, so that if there's any question, it could certainly have been changed. I couldn't agree with you anymore. I have, for one, like you said, your ideas and desires and designs may be different from Paul's or Oscar's or anybody's. I don't know. We all have different ideas. But that's the reason I did it 2 months prior.
So what, the way I understand it, unless there are other comments about this, is that, one of the things that we're concerned with here is the character of a neighborhood. And how a structure impacts that character. And in both cases, administrative or otherwise, the wall and the portal are kind of out of scale to that neighborhood at this point. So we would have liked a discussion on that, because it changes the neighborhood. It doesn't mean it doesn't belong in other historic areas, but there are established areas that have a fiber or a character going. And as far as the Armada, it's way upscale to what was there. So I don't know if there's been any comments from the neighborhood or what about that. So that's where we'd be coming from. It's pretty hard for us to, I don't see who it benefits to try to override some administrative business, like if you were granted a permit for a wall, that doesn't mean you don't need a permit for the Armada. So it puts everybody in a bind. My comment is that it has changed the street, and I'd like to listen to what other people have to say. For me, it's quite impactful, and I don't know that it's in scale or keeping with the rest of the neighborhood, except once it's there, I guess it sets a precedent. One of the things that I noticed is that you have lights in your parking that have a lens on them, but they're awfully bright. The low lights that shine on the spaces, it seems to me they should have been shielded, or some kind of auditorium type lights, or turned off for now, because this thing not only is there, it has a presence and it has a lot of glow, a lot of bling to it, you know? It's so, on either side, I'm just saying, you've impacted the neighborhood. But one of the examples would be those lights are glaring for someone walking by this neighborhood, this residential neighborhood, basically. Yes, ma'am.
They're gonna be covered with plants.
Well,
Are you talking the ones down at the bottom?
No, we're talking about the prominent decorative
Oh, the
wall-mounted light.
no, those are pretty bright as it is, and they're pretty
So they may be low.
pretty large. But the ones that are low, I'm telling you, they're not the right lights. You need lights when the diffuser or deflector is shining right now. And when those plants are pruned or cut back for the season, or when it snows, they're awfully bright.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to like pick it to death, but I'm just using that as an example of something that's kind of out of proportion to the neighborhood. It's like it's shining in your eyes when you walk by it. Right now, if you were to walk by there, those lights are shining in your eye, and they need to be either turned off, or the proper shielding needs to be applied to those lights.
We can do that, that's not a problem. The reason that we have added the lights is that, as you well know, graffiti is a problem. And actually, our walls have been marked several times, and we've had to paint over them because of the markings. And
Your new wall?
No, not on the new wall, not on the new wall. On the side of the building that goes on the
Up the hill.
up the hill. Yeah.
That's George's Lane.
Yeah, well, no, on the other side. It goes up between, where Essie's the backside, between us and La Cueva. That wall's been marked, and our front wall, but just before you turn into our drive, it's been marked several times. And so, what we're trying to do is, and there's been some things stolen off of our patio, and that's part of the reason that we kind of went to this, is to protect ourselves, you know, give ourselves some protection.
Okay,
But I agree with everything you say, and I would certainly, I can only do with the information that I'm ever given, okay? And in the planning and zoning, I went to them, and this is what they said you had to do. And then they said they submitted to the Historical Preservation Committee. I don't know if they do or they don't, it's not my job. I mean, so I guess that's kind of, I'm a little surprised I'm even here, because it seems like, to me, like really the problem is between planning and zoning and historical preservation, not between me and y'all. I wish I wasn't here.
well, in hindsight, it's really with you and your neighborhood, in my opinion. Mr. Bellis, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of the staff or anything on this case? No?
You know, we're just here because ultimately, staff wants your input as to where you want to go with this. It's just that incident, it's a lesson learned, or we can do everything from a fine to you can make them tear it down.
Right.
There it is.
Welcome to
And
the
we'll change
neighborhood.
the light bulbs, y'all make a recommendation, which y'all,
Just take a look at the dark sky ordinance that applies.
okay,
Sure.
I believe it's countywide, it has nothing to do with the historic zone, but
okay,
all nighttime lighting, countywide, needs to be dark sky compliant. And really what that means, if you read the ordinance, if you can see the bulb or the lamp, your fixture is not compliant. So swapping out the lamp isn't gonna do it. It really needs to be a shielded fixture where you can't see the lamp. And that's a countywide thing. And I think it makes sense. If you drive around at night, there's some pretty glaring properties. You know which properties are non-compliant because they hit you in the face at night. All our little town is trying to do is to preserve our dark skies so that we can see the stars. Simple. How tall is your doorway total for the opening? Seems very tall. Is it?
Yeah, I believe it's 9 feet tall.
Okay. I'd like to see a shorter door there, but I'm not gonna make that a condition or.
No, the door
It's just
itself, the door itself is not. The door itself is only about 6 foot tall,
So
6 and a half
opening is
foot
9
tall.
feet.
Yeah, the opening.
Uh-huh. Okay. What are your plans, outside of the compound to the south? Right now, I see a finely graded parking area. Is that going to be paved, landscaped?
Actually, we went to, and ordered rock, to lay rock down, and,
Stone or actually
Rock.
a gravel?
gravel rock.
Uh-huh, okay. You're gonna cover that in gravel,
Uh-huh.
all the way out to the, Quesnel,
Right,
which is paved.
right.
and plants, and the plants will be all around the wall, which hopefully will make it look shorter,
Sure.
you know, trees and things like
Go a long way with Virginia Creek.
So there are gonna be nice plantings and everything, and actually,
flowers.
I've got water run out through the wall so that we can go around and water the plants and you know, like you said, it looks tall now, but it won't look tall when you have 3 or 4 foot plants going up.
We don't have anybody, I guess it was really then no notification to the neighborhood of what they felt about it.
They stopped in and told us how nice they think it is.
And
People
and
walking
you're
by.
you're the only one in the neighborhood, what do you think about it? No, I mean, I'm just,
Certainly
I'm
there
just
must be more
asking for
neighbors.
input.
Well, the area is a mixed residential, commercial area, so it's sort of, and we're down at the end of Quesnel, it's residential, but there's not too many residents down there. In fact, I think the few residents we had that were renters across the street I'm not sure if much of anybody's there now, because that's on the market, so, that's sort of almost a cross streaming with it. But, I don't know, I just think, my personal feeling is that this was an unfortunate occurrence that happened at a transition time, and I would just accept it as it is, and perhaps with some lighting changes.
Sure.
And
That's
some
no problem.
plantings and things like that, and I think we'll get used to it, so.
Is your father an architect in Texas, Mr. Cotton?
My dad was an engineer in Texas and an engineer in the state of New Mexico, and I practiced architecture and went to architecture school in Texas.
A firm called CRS or CRS?
Yeah, they're out of Dallas.
CRS. Are you the-
Serene. Actually,
You're not the college.
Actually, CRS is out of Houston.
Houston.
Uh-huh. If they still exist.
No, they do
This is
exist.
all totally irrelevant.
They do exist. I knew one of the head planners there,
That's not
but
the same call.
no.
Okay, so, any other comments,
We
either from
apologize
the
for
commission or
inconvenience.
from anyone else?
My comment would be a direction to the staff that before issuing an administrative permit for such activities, that they really look at it very carefully and consider bringing it to the Historic Preservation Commission, particularly when we're talking about not replacing with an in-kind design. But this was reviewed administratively and approved, and so I appreciate Molly and Mark coming and giving us a chance to discuss it, and having the chance for all the commissioners to speak about it. But I would, I don't know if we need to direct the staff to remove the red tag, and, or what is involved with that once something is tagged. But I see no reason to keep the tag in place. You know, make a motion to that effect, if that's required.
Diana, has the second part of the project in question received a building permit now?
We received the application, the building permit has not been issued. We were waiting for this meeting to happen, and then we'll issue the building
But
permit.
they paid the fees?
He paid the fees actually with the first building permit. He just never took that part of it out. And so the fees were paid, but the permit wasn't issued for that part of it because he was told that he didn't need a permit.
And staff has no problem removing the red tag at this time. We'll issue the permit for the file so that it makes it legal. And,
But if I may, I think that's a good point. I think staff should be compensated for whatever that permit would have cost, because I think you need a building permit when you're changing the character of the structure. And anywhere in the town, but especially in the historic. I mean, I mean, we're trying to not have these, you all tear it down, and there has been, but I think as a compromise, this is also put, for consideration, this has put the staff through some changes, and it's their authority to red tag buildings that don't have proper permitting, regardless of how that came about. So, my recommendation would be to leave it as it is. I would like to see the lights, and I guess the major lights modified or toned down to work with work with staff, or you can bring it back to us if like it, but I don't see any reason to waive the permit for the part that did not have a permit. As a compromise to not tearing it all down, if that's what we really have the authority to do. I don't wanna ask them to do that, but I think, the fee should be paid
I thought we could.
I think they've already paid.
for the,
Yeah.
not for the Ramada.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the Ramada.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, when I first went in there,
So the,
Oh, okay. I
You just don't have the
misunderstood.
piece of paper,
yeah, I just don't have a piece
in the file or have had it on the Ramada. And I'm glad I know what a Ramada is now, as opposed to a Portal or a Viga. But,
Could you check on that? If he's not required to do a permit, or was told he wasn't required to do that, were those fees paid? And if they weren't paid, I'd like to see them paid. If they were paid, excuse me, you know,
We're good.
and in the future, any construction that goes on, especially in the historic, because that's our purview, we want to know about it. And we'd like to feel that we're here to help you and the neighborhood. We're not here to put anybody down. Thank you for coming in and presenting your case. Whatever hardship that gave you, want you to know that we appreciate you coming before us and explaining your situation.
Well, I'm just very sorry, my wife and I are very sorry, because, I mean, we want to be a part of this whole,
Sure.
historic.
Okay. So-
I commend you for being transparent. I think you've done the right thing. I don't think the fault lies with the coddles here. I don't know, maybe the town of Taos broke the ball a little bit. It's water under the bridge.
I mean, if it would help, I will say that the Ramada, it ended up costing us about $1,500 more than expected. So, I mean, if you want to adjust the permit for that, I'd be glad to. I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
It doesn't matter whether you paid it or not. If you didn't, construction always varies and they take that into account. If it can be demonstrated that a fee was received to accept that without plans, then I don't think we need to punish you further. That's my opinion.
Can I ask a question of what wattage falls, or is that in the dark sky ordinance?
Totally irrelevant. If you read the ordinance, you can have the
Like
brightest
colors?
lamp in the world, as long as it is shielded and you can't see it. So it essentially has to direct its light straight down and not out or
Out.
up.
Okay,
It can be a very bright lamp. It
okay.
can be a
We're worried
5,000
about
watt lamp.
liability, somebody falling too, so we're in the
Yeah.
interest.
The point of the ordinance is not to eliminate lighting, right? That's actually a code thing. If you have a walkway, you have to have lighting.
Okay,
But we're trying to be judicious about how we use light, point it down, not point it up or
we'll
down.
talk to the electrician.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very common ordinance. Most states are adopting something similar. Dark sky ordinance, you just go to your lighting supplier and say, hey, I need a dark sky compliant fixture. And most of them kind of have they're branded as dark sky compliant. Real easy.
And I can get you a copy of the dark skies ordinance.
I'll come by tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
So, do I just need to come to the planning zone tomorrow, meet with you and Rick, or with Rick tomorrow morning?
I can take care of it.
Yeah, you can come to my office and
Do we need to make a motion into all this discussion, or seems like?
This is an advisory matter, but considering at some point later, a neighbor could potentially question the legality of how the process was done in order to protect the applicant as well as the town, I would suggest, yes, that you make a motion as the Historic Commission acknowledging what is there, and with your recommendation that it be permitted to exist, and that as long as the permit fees have been paid, that staff can remove the violation notice.
Is there a second to his? Or would someone like to make that motion?
Mr. Chairman,
No, No, I don't
You
make,
can't make that motion?
no, I don't.
As the chair, you cannot.
I
So
don't.
I'll go ahead and move for the legal record that the commission acknowledges the design and the permit fees being paid for this matter at 109 Quesnel for the wall and for the ramada, and direct the staff to remove the red tag.
And mention something about the lighting, or no?
I don't have the lighting in that motion. If you wanna,
I don't know that the lighting is necessary. The lighting is a statewide as well as municipal ordinance on dark skies, so we're required to enforce it as part of the building code.
Oh, it's taken care of by another. All right. Here a second?
Second.
All, roll call?
David Henry? Commissioner Henry?
I'm gonna abstain. I'm gonna hold my vote.
Commissioner Christmas?
4.
Commissioner Palacios?
4.
Commissioner Figueroa?
4.
And Commissioner
Aye.
So be it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B, Dan, if you could please introduce that.
Okay, 108 La Loma Plaza, there was a red tag to the repairs to a wall. And that was, it did come before the Historic Preservation Commission for a certificate of appropriateness. It was approved, and with the condition that they bring the plans to the Planning and Zoning Department, and they did not do that. And I believe Bernard Voorhees is here to speak about that.
Please.
Excuse me, my name is Bernard Voorhees, and I swear to tell the truth,
Thank you.
as far as I know it.
Well, there's no other kind of truth.
I got no dog in this fight. Susan asked me, because she couldn't be here, she's a little old lady that lives in California, to come to the first meeting, and I probably should have denied it, because now I'm sucked into the whole thing. I passed on what we talked about the last time to the contractor, Philip Valencia. And apparently he didn't turn the plans in. When he went in to turn in the plans, they told him he needed a permit. And that's when the red tag came up. So he called me, and I called Susan. She said no, that she'd already had permission from Amy Rincon not to do that. And all I really have is emails back and forth, pretty much the same thing. So really what I'm here trying to do is, what does she need to do to go forward? Does she need a permit? There may be a problem in that she'll have to hire a local contractor, licensed general contractor, because she doesn't live in the house. She's not a primary, I was told that, and I don't know what that is. I'm just trying to figure out, I need to email and say, Susan, here's what you need to do to satisfy all the difficulties that are going on there. She did tell me that she called Amy, and Amy had called around to the guy that red tagged it, and to the town manager, who was apparently, am I wrong in this, he's apparently the planning commissioner now?
There's a town manager.
He's an acting director.
Acting, yeah. And he called her and told her that the wall had changed, had been higher, and it used to be serpentine, which is absolutely not true at all. It's a very simple wall, straight.
What has been
No,
done?
that's not true.
Portions of the wall were removed and rebuilt, or what has been done? Why are we?
There was a section of the wall where the adobe had just decayed. And they put new adobe in, and then they put I actually took pictures. I should have brought them. I've gone by every 2 or 3 days and taken pictures of this thing. And That was it. That one little section of wall, they put new adobe in, they put that inch foam over it, and then they wired the whole, they took all the old plaster off first, and then they wired it, and then they put the cement coat on, and that's where it stands as we speak.
Okay. It's my understanding we're here because no building permit was applied for?
Mr. Chairman, councilors, it's a couple of different issues. One is to correct the project based on the direction you gave to staff in the record was that the plans were to be presented to the staff and reviewed, at which time it would have been determined if it needed a building permit, which it did. The building inspector would have approved the plans that they were structurally correct and it wasn't a safety hazard and would have fallen on anyone, and then issued a permit, which would have been based on the value of the improvements. None of that was done. Subsequent to that, one of our own commissioners indicated, since she lives in close proximity to the wall, she came in with some pictures and we compared them to the original pictures, and it appeared that some of the design of the wall was different.
Okay.
And I think it's arguable as to how different it is, whether it's substantially different or minorly different. But I believe the statement was also made that it's higher than it used to be.
Yes, that there was an appearance of, it appeared to be higher, and there was a reason for that statement and that observation that it appeared to be higher, but I'm happy to embellish on that.
I'd just like to
But
say.
what we initially, I believe the red tag is about, is that we simply did not see where this wall was going and what the finished wall would look like. But it was rapidly being completed. So that's why it was stop, let us know where you're going with this. I can vouch for the fact that that wall initially appeared, and I'll explain, higher, but that was more of an optical illusion, and it was based on something. And that's because the original wall had initially far larger and beefier buttresses up against the wall. The wall itself was rounder. There was a small curve over the gate. Also, the original wall was a good deal wider at the base than at the top. It wasn't a stiff, straight up and down affair, one width affair. It was not that. So, an example is, the same amount of liquid can look like a different amount depending on how tall and round the glass is. And that's where the walls that had been there, we were seeing a different wall beginning to go up there. And that's when this got stopped. Show us where this is going. Because this needed to be the wall that was there. So the width of the wall at the base made that wall look shorter, and add to that, the greenery and all that are up against it in the original photographs, taken way back. So now those very same qualities of the wall that I just mentioned, where it was narrower, it was not a straight up and down one width affair, it was wider at the bottom, it was very sculptural, really large buttresses. Those very same qualities are the ones that gave that wall a really soft, rounded, sculptural quality. And those qualities define its contribution as a fine example of Pueblo revival on the south side of La Loma Plaza, and earned it, is part of what earned it its plaque. That plaque was right on that wall. So these qualities are at present missing from that wall. And that's why we need to say, whoa, let's stop and talk about this. Let's get that wall reflective of what that wall was. Now's the time to do it. So
This is
The
bad.
directives at the meeting we had here was a request to restore the wall, that was there. Okay? And to use the same materials, as is, as much as possible per code. And, it's exactly those amended versions, as this is my last statement, it's exactly these amended versions, replacements of walls such as this, or sections of homes. It's those amended versions that, over time, water down and erase what was there and replaced with something else. And so, that's where I want to bring the awareness up, because there is a real sense of that in Taos to protect and maintain and preserve those inherent characteristics. And many locals, I have heard from locals some of whom are pretty heartsick about this being lost over time with replacements that don't reflect what was there, but head in a different direction. And once that's done, what was there is gone forever. So that's what I have to say about it. So, hey, Mr. Henry, you had something to say?
I do. I don't have too many comments about the wall itself. It looks like it's quite similar to what was there. I appreciate your comments that it's slightly different. I just wanted to point out to all of us, maybe this is an educational thing, this applicant did exactly the opposite of what the Cottles did. The Cottles came to the town, they had the documents, they hired an engineer, they did drawings, they said, here it is, what do we need to do? The town said, looks good, proceed. That was a bit of a mistake. There was no historic review. This applicant came in with nothing, no drawings, no building permit, no contractor,
Right.
and introduced themselves to our commission. And we said, looks great, go get a building permit. The exact opposite of what the Cottles did.
Mm-hmm.
And in both cases, we ended up back here with a red tag. And I think it's fascinating that there's multiple ways to get tripped up here. I guess the bottom line is to cross all your T's and dot all your I's and follow the process to a T.
I learned a lot.
Yes, sir.
Listening to the first guy,
Uh-huh.
I learned a lot. And, I got sidetracked by Susan, who kept insisting she'd already had done everything that needed to be done, and all we needed to do was pass it by you guys.
Sure.
And I apologize for that. Like I said, I learned a lot the last listening to how this gentleman did it.
So, Mr. Chairman, at this point, staff, we don't see any substantial difference. I mean, historic design is not our forte, but we don't see it as substantially different than the wall that it replaced. However, from a procedural standpoint, we wanted to bring that to your attention. So that's your judgment call entirely. From a regulatory standpoint, the red tag has to be resolved because there has to be a building permit application which estimates the value of the we also need to structurally know what was under the wall so that.
I did take pictures because I figured that down the line that'd be an issue. I have several questions. First of all, the obvious one is where does she go from here? Secondly, can she pull a permit herself since she's not a primary resident living in California? Because I was told, in fact, even read it in the permit that you had to be a primary resident.
Is she the owner of the property?
She owns it, but she doesn't live there.
That's fine. What we care about is that the owner of the property makes the application so that we don't have people making work or representing things about somebody else's house.
And the second thing.
Kind of where you found yourself.
Yeah. The second thing is, in terms of, I agree completely with the stuff like that. I hate straight walls, frankly, but
Thank you.
it isn't finished yet, and a large part of what you saw about the bottom was the fact that it was rotting out and it already poured out like that. Hopefully, it'll have that hand tool thing when Philip's finished. He's pretty good at that. I understand.
We have photographs, I think there are plenty of photographs that are a matter
I
of.
took some myself, and Susan said, in her email, and she said she had it back for 10 years, so there'll be enough, should be enough. I'll turn the light over to Philip and say, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. But,
Otto's wall too fancy, this wall too simple is what I'm hearing.
Now, they'll have one other thing that's come up, and this is upon observation of the building itself. You know, this whole endeavor occurred because of
lack of maintenance.
the wall was so far gone after having been there since the late 1700s.
I think 1780.
That it had to be replaced, and that is most regrettable. At the same time, if you stand there at the front entrance, there is some concern about the facade of the actual building behind it, the actual building itself, because these same cracks and fissures seem to be appearing there, and yet there does not seem to be some sort of plan in place or discussion about maintenance of this. What's been noticed is spaces where the windows are right now, where plant matter has been growing because there's such shrinkage, and this is next, is what I'm saying. So while we're discussing this wall that is now being needed to be rebuilt because it has gone so far down that it collapsed, what is in line for the protection of the remainder of the building, at least what we can see visually, so that we don't go there. We don't need to do that, you know.
I can't speak, she's an odd duck. I like Susan a lot, she's a sweet little old lady, and she's very, very bright. She's a PhD, a neuropsychiatrist, and she's a very strange, wealthy lady. And she had a manager, a property manager, that I was hoping to come here with and take this on, because she should have done it at the beginning. And I got an email saying, no, I don't work with Kathleen anymore because she was trying to get me to rebuild the house. I had walked through with Kathleen. We met up there about a month ago. I liked her a lot. She's a sensible lady. And we walked through the house. She showed me everything's wrong because there's a business. She can't rent the place out with cracks in the windows and with cracks in the walls and stuff like that. And Susan fired her because she couldn't rent the place out. So this is a huge issue. And if I have permission, I would love, when I talk to her next, to say the historic committee is very concerned about the house. I would love to be able to have your permission to be able to say that.
Well, you certainly have permission to use my comments because it's very obvious. You can, please, you know, stand in front of it and you can see cracks right there in the facade. There is reason to be concerned.
I agree. I walked through with Kathleen.
It's next. So what plan is there right now to maintain it so that we don't have another wall collapse? And that is a good question given this situation.
Lots of terrific writing and good timing on it too, because if I can tell her, okay, this is Susan, this is what you need to do to have the wall finished.
Yeah. Even if.
But this was also, and this is going to come up fairly quickly because of the the extremes of weathers we've been in.
Yeah. So I personally, I don't know about my fellow commissioners, but I personally still, today I would have liked to have seen a drawing of what this wall is going to look like when you're done. And we still don't have anything that any of us have really looked at.
I understand that. Philip apparently had walked in to present that to the commission, and I don't know who told him he couldn't, because he's just a specific contractor. He's licensed, but he's not a general. And he said he had to fill out be a general contractor with the permit to turn that thing in. So he just walked off and called me, and that's where I emailed Susan, and she got all flustered and said, I didn't need any of that. I talked to Amy, and she called Amy, and then the city manager called her, and then she emailed me and said, would you mind going again? And I went, okay, I'm curious. I was very curious.
Well, here's what's gonna happen. If you're not careful, you're gonna get in farther if you have to start dealing with the state well, she is.
Yeah,
The
she
state is the one who has plaqued that building. And within certain restrictions, such as if they feel that we approve something within certain parameters that are in keeping with their, what we read as their intent,
I got it.
like it's a done deal. But like, if we said it was okay to rebuild in kind, and that the staff was gonna take care of it. And now it's coming back to us that maybe the staff didn't take care of it. And there's enough people here to feel that it's changed. At a certain point, it won't even be up to us, it's gonna be up to the state. And they're stricter, I'll tell you, like, you were pointing out, they can make you just tear it down and play the game all over. We can too, but I mean, we're not of that ilk, they don't, it doesn't seem to bother them to do that, and maybe it shouldn't bother us either, but, so, it's come back to us because you didn't do what we asked you to do, and that was just build it in kind and work with the staff and get the proper permitting. And now it comes back to us that this, it's kind of a staff issue, and it starts, if it starts getting into this question of, is it close enough to what the state required, it's gonna go back to the state. Because for us, we can supplement and complement the state, but we cannot righteously overrule it, in my opinion. So, our part is, if there's enough, I looked at the wall, I'm not sure what the whole plaque is about. I don't know if the plaque was issued just for the wall, I doubt it. It didn't look a whole lot different. I was very curious to hear some of the details of why it's different, and I do agree with Chairman Chuma, Commissioner Chuma, that subtle things can change the impact of something. But boy, and going to the building and if this starts changing enough, she's gonna lose her plaque. Now, whether that's important to her or not, I don't know, but it's not, we don't issue those plaques. We should, maybe, or should be a version of it, but it's kind of a bureaucratic, state issue. I get someone, if I were you, to appease the person that put the red tag on there, that you're following our recommendations, and that you're trying the best you can to replace what was there. And taking in some of these criticisms, it's important that it had, you shouldn't even be able to tell it's a new rebuilt or a rebuilt wall. It should be part of the fiber of what was there, and we assumed that you would do that because it was actually, well, if I remember right, it was an emergency meeting to allow you to do this, or it was at some kind of an exclamation point to it. It was not a
We were the only people, I was the only person here, I think it was the only case.
But as a case, it was brought up that it was a fear that it was deteriorating and that you would like to work on it before it got worse. And so we were trying to work with you.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
And so we made, without reading everything, I'm pretty sure that those are our recommendations.
Yeah. No, there was definitely a breakdown. It was actually Philip was the fellow that, like I say, I said, I went to Phil and said, okay, this is, they give me approval, here's what you got, here's what you gotta do. And he had the plans, he just didn't bring them in until later.
Right, but you're the only guy we know. I mean,
I got it.
so if my draftsman messes up, guess whose fault it is?
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Excuse me.
No, I understand.
I mean-
I'm taking responsibility for that.
Yes.
I just,
Yes.
As far as we have not received the plans for the wall. We have received, an application for a building permit, but the plans were not, submitted.
okay, I don't know about that. He told me that he brought in the plans with the application. He was told he couldn't apply because he wasn't a general.
No, he just brought in the application and, because he's not a licensed contractor in the state of New Mexico, so we, told him that he would have to have, Ms. Crutchfield pull the permit as a homeowner.
Okay, this is getting sorted out, because she was told, and I saw that she wasn't able to do that, so she was wary about having to hire a general contractor to hire a subcontractor. But it's okay for her to pull that?
Tricky question.
Those,
As an owner builder, she's supposed to be doing the work or hiring. There are some stipulations, there's a form she needs to fill out. It's one or the other. You're either hiring a general contractor and that general contractor is following all building codes and they're responsible, or the owner is saying, I'm doing it myself with some people that I hired and I'm responsible for it. And there's kind of no middle ground. That's how I understand it. Is that
So-
correct, Mr. Bellis?
I just want to be clear in this, because I don't want to get it messed up. It's okay for her to pull the, though she
She
doesn't
has,
live in the
I
house.
believe she has two options. She
Well,
can
I
hire a
still
licensed-
submit that I would still like to see what this wall is going to look like. I would like to see dimensions, I would like to see the materials verified. I think earlier in this discussion, you indicated that you understood what I was referring to, and yeah, there was an understanding there, so that's great. Just, I would like to see it. So we can put it as a matter of record, then follow through on its completion. That is the big difference here, that we have a completed project where we had applicants that apparently did go through submitting everything that was requested of them, but we are still waiting to get the specs on this wall and what it's going to look like. And so that we can proceed forward. And the speed at which we proceed forward is certainly up to you.
Well, I kept going on these emails she kept sending me, saying, no, it's all been taken care of. Amy said this and Amy said that. And then when the red flag came, that, I suddenly realized what,
Yeah.
things
Well,
are.
Mr. Chairman, if I can clarify that, because I did have 2 conversations with Amy, okay? She was able to say what the applicant should or shouldn't do up to the point where she said she would get this case for the applicant in front of the Historic Commission. But Amy was no longer involved in that case once the Historic Commission became involved. And by their stating, in fact, I requested the language be put in motion, that the drawings be brought to staff prior to the construction and approved, because it was very clear it wasn't a GB98 contractor and this wasn't an engineered wall. And we have a public safety requirement for that. At that point, once they made that condition, whatever Amy said up till then was irrelevant, because it would be like me going before a planning commission or the town council. I can tell you whatever I think to get you there, but as the governing body, they put the conditions on the approval. If I could give all those approvals, the project wouldn't have needed to come before the Historic Commission. And in fact, they made the correct decision. Because if you don't get the plans in ahead of time, if somebody doesn't draw a specification, then we wind up back here doing this. And the reason we usually require, and probably in this case will require, that the owner either officially designate an agent on their behalf or sign all the documentation, is because it's not fair to hold you responsible. And now we can't hold her responsible. But There is a larger concern here, and that is that when we first came on in this administration in March, I believe you were considering that on another emergency application, which you had to do a site visit, which was for a building that was in very bad condition, and it was for the demolition of that building. And,
Is that fine?
Yep.
and I think
Well, it's owner neglect.
under neglect, we should have a concern that the town is not in fact enforcing not just the historic code, but the building code, which says that, much in the case of this house, that we shouldn't wait till the building needs to be demolished and then it's lost forever, and then we have to argue about what comes in and replaces it and how true to the area it is, which like we discussed in the work session. So the town, in this case, like I said, as planning director, to help you along with what you're saying about the owner, is that we will send a letter to the owner as a result of this meeting, stating that, and I'm going to paraphrase it, generally from appearance sake, aesthetics, the wall does meet what was there. However, it requires a building permit, and that in noticing, in granting the emergency permit for the wall, it also became obvious that there's severe deterioration to the primary residence that borders on structural decay, and that if it's not addressed, that the building can be condemned by the town, or the property owner can be ordered to correct it, subject to the potential forfeiture of the property or a fine of $200 a day. And I think that will encourage the owner to have to make a decision. Can they afford to hang on to the house for sentimental reasons, long distance, or do they need to sell the house to someone who can afford to make the repairs, or are they willing to invest what's necessary? Because as you indicated, as long as you can't put a tenant in it, it continues to deteriorate because you don't have money to put in the house to preserve it. So I think we have an obligation to follow that path.
I think it's a very good thing. I walked through the house with Kathleen and upset me. Of course, you know, physical, I just hate to see. So just to get it clear, I'll come by and pick up the paper she needs to sign, that she's able to sign as a homeowner builder. And then she can deal directly with Philip, who's the plaster, who's doing the plaster work. Okay? This is what I'm hearing?
You also need his letter that he's gonna draft. Now,
Yeah,
you
can
will
move
need
ahead.
a follow-up letter to help you substantiate what you're asking to do.
I'm gonna email her right away tomorrow.
Right, but I mean, as part of the packet where you, besides just the building permit, you need to understand where you are in the legalities of the town at this point.
Right.
And he's willing to draft that letter.
Yeah. No, I
And
think
an
that's
additional
very-
thing, I think that will help you in pointing that out to her is that if you do construction, even if you're the homeowner, you do the construction yourself, and it's completed, in something such as a wall or footings or an interior wall, so we can't visually inspect that. We don't know what's inside there, so we can't determine that that's safe. It isn't just cardboard and plastic over, it could all fall down. The building code actually requires that the building official should require you to get a licensed civil engineer, structural engineer, or architect to certify that wall is, it meets all the standards. And that's a very expensive and difficult proposition. Some of the folks up here are architects, and they'll tell you how reluctant they are to swear off at something they never saw or what. And that can affect your ability to get that will also affect the fact that your insurance company won't cover anything that you did, which the town can't give you a certificate of occupancy for, or a final inspection.
So, thank you.
No, thank you. Apologize for when that's part of it was my fault, not carrying through, making sure that Philip, he said he would, but I guess he didn't do it soon enough. And then Susan, every time I talked to her, she just kept saying, no, it's all taken care of, don't worry about it, right? Amy, but I'm hoping you won't see me again. She's coming in on the 15th, by the way, so I don't know when your next meeting is.
Meeting
You may get a chance to meet her
December
in
10th.
person. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to request a 5-minute recess before we go on to the next item, please.
Okay, I'm Paul Figueroa, the vice chair. Chairman Palacio had to leave, wasn't feeling well, so I'll call us back from the recess. And the next item on the approved agenda is an informational presentation on a birdcage to be built at 118 C La Loma Plaza.
Yes, I'm gonna call Pedro up to give his presentation on the bird cage.
Thank you. So state your name and know that you're being recorded.
Your
My name-
connection to the project, so to speak.
My name is Gintanal Yokis, and I will speak the truth.
Thank you.
You have some plans that I drew up for a small building that I want to put in a parking lot, which presently is a flower bed. It'll be a birdhouse or a loft for birds, doves, pigeons. It's something I've done all my life. It's a hobby with it. And I'd like to, once again, do that. So I'd like to build that little building in the corner of the parking lot. It's 12 feet long by 5 feet wide. And it will not have a foundation. It'll just sit on P-rock. And the center part is 4 feet 9 by 5 feet wide. I have it on my drawing. And that will be sitting on the ground. And then it'll have 10 on either side, which is 3.5 feet by 4 feet wide. If you look at it from the top view, you can visualize it. And it'll be constructed out of wood. And I want it to have a really nice appearance, so I'll either put a nice little metal roof on it or possibly cedar shakes or something like that. It'll have, in the center area, it'll have some large doors that swing open because the birds need a lot of ventilation, so there'll be some hardware cloth, and they'll be contained within that building that you see in front of you.
You're number 114, is that correct? Your property is to the left in the corner.
118, it's two, let's see which way I'm looking at.
I'm looking at your floor plan. I'm trying to determine which home is yours.
Go this way.
Are you 114, 118?
No, 118.
118.
It was
It's a detailed plat here.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. You do not own 114.
No. That's a wall between, it's a large wall between 114 and that parking lot.
Oh, great.
The wall is almost 6 feet high.
And that wall is on your property?
Well, that's the property line, the wall is on the line. And that's a large adobe wall.
Will the birdhouse be taller than the wall?
It will be just like maybe a foot. And just at the peak in the middle, and the roof will slope down only the center part of the building will be above the roof. The rest will be down below the roof.
Oh, and, you know, this drawing that you have here,
Yeah,
where
that-
would it be?
Okay.
I mean, it kind of looks like this, but that's not in the right place.
Yeah, this is,
Because it looks like this, but that's at 114, so that's why I'm confused.
yeah, 114 is over here.
Right,
The building's going to be right here, and I live right here.
so this is it.
That's it right there.
That's what
This
I
is
thought.
where I live. I come out and my cars are parked right there.
I see,
Okay.
that's, that, and I was seeing this, and I thought, wait a minute, you're here,
Yeah.
why is this here?
Yeah, good.
Because,
That's where the parking lot is.
right. Okay. All right, all right.
Yeah,
Now, we
we
said-
met in the
We did.
plaza, and I was just directly straight ahead. I think that's
Yeah.
northwest is the direction.
Yeah, so you said, just remind me again, the materials, and this is year-round, this will be there full-time?
Yes, yes.
And people will see this is not behind a wall, you know?
Well, I could put a latia around it or something like that,
Mhm.
but I'm hoping to make it attractive enough that that's
Yeah,
not going to be there.
because, you know, we do have, it appears there's a little pitch roof thing here. We're not doing Pueblo-style birdhouse,
No.
so,
No, it's not, it's not permanent. It's not permanent, it's.
right.
No, it's-
And you said paneling on the sides, and what is the materials again, paneling?
It'll be plywood and a lot of hardware cloths, and then I'm just gonna try to make it attractive in any of the open spaces.
I see. Are you going to
I
have
have
any
to look
wrought
at it.
iron bars or anything like this?
Anyway,
Wrought iron bars, you know, like birdcage kind bars?
no, I
No.
don't think so. No.
No.
If I do anything, it'll be some doweling.
Okay, okay.
Can you come and point out where you are on this survey?
I live right here, I walk out courtyard, and that's this area, and I walk out this way, into this parking lot in the middle. The building will be right there, which is right here. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's a little more accurate than my building.
Is Kim Goodyear still your neighbor? She's the adjacent?
She no longer lives there, this,
It's been sold.
yeah, she sold that to Annette Sanders. She's lived there for the last 4 or 5 years, I guess.
So is
Kim's
this,
been gone for a while.
I think I
Questions
would
from the
just have to
commissioners?
walk up because I'm trying to get a sense of when you're on the Loma Plaza and you're looking over to that, where the cars are parked, this little bird structure is open to La Loma Plaza and, you know,
Yes.
full view, right?
Well, not
That's
from-
why I
not from-
asked.
Not from everywhere on the plaza, because we're stuck back a little ways.
Okay,
It's not like, it's like,
Right.
116 is right on the plaza,
mm-hmm.
and our parking lot goes back in just a ways.
Yeah, because, you know, perhaps a little well-placed little bit of latia fencing might be attractive
Yes.
for anyone that is standing in the plaza and just happens to look that way. Don't necessarily need to be full-on with the birdcage. They'll see a little well-placed latia business.
Exactly.
And
I've been thinking.
that would
about it.
be one of my recommendations. And then, yeah. Yeah.
After, like have 6 feet of latia fence.
Yeah.
In fact, that would work well for me because it would give
Mhm.
me some protection as
Right.
well.
Well, I would be good
Any
with that.
comments or questions from the other commissioners?
Do you happen to know what, in past decades or even centuries? Where did people have birds or keep birds or raise birds in Taos? You know?
I hear chickens,
Chicken, yeah.
and roosters crowing, peacocks.
In your.
I don't know exactly where they are, because there's a lot of buildings, so, but there's a lot of feral cats and a lot of,
Okay, good, okay.
Pigeons, you said, right?
they're quiet. I mean,
This is for
they be
pigeons?
contained, yeah, they coo.
Do you let them out and they fly around?
I could,
Is that what the holes are for up at the top, or is it
yeah,
ventilation?
it's something I'm considering, because they just fly for a short time and then they come back to eat. But, I'm not sure I'm going to do that.
Great. Okay, building permit required?
Yeah.
No.
Questions from the commissioners to the staff. This is new to me, that a bird cage would come before the Historic Preservation Commission, but it is in a very important historic district. Are there any items in our handbook that you think need to be addressed through this request?
It's strictly before you for aesthetic purposes and because, as you indicated, it's in a very historic area.
So we addressed the visibility, something that is a concern for the streetscape, for the plaza-scape, if you will, that all of a sudden
Like a Latia fence.
a large bird
Yes.
cage is visible. I know it's not visible from all areas of the plaza, but when I drive by or walk through, or someone is painting in the plaza, this might be something we'd like to see you address. Trying to not be as visible. It is in a parking lot, or your parking
There's cars
spaces.
parked there.
Yeah, so.
But I'm concerned about the visual aesthetics as well.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you do plan on this being a permanent structure there, is that right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's why we are looking at it. This is a permanent structure added to La Loma Plaza, so regardless, housing birds. So I think that would be wonderful, a well-placed Latia fence, and this way you have the structure that you need for the birds, and yet, it's in keeping with La Loma Plaza. Yeah, yeah. Anything else? Any other
No
suggestions?
permits are required, no
No.
approvals from staff in any way.
I think it's administrative permit.
I've heard about those tonight.
Of course, this is a multifamily dwelling, we could make each pigeon get a sound address. I think we'll win that.
So, and I guess the precedent is at the Maple Dodge Lewin House, there's quite a few
Yeah, they have pigeon cotes there, though.
pigeon cotes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's an old English thing.
Those are major. Right.
These birds will be more controlled than those.
Have fun, enjoy your birds.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I really don't need anything else.
I'd ask you to check in with the staff and make sure that what you're proposing, they've looked at
And,
administratively, say it's fine.
yeah, and just simply show the addition of that Latia fence, its placement, and that's it.
So I can start doing something, laying the groundwork, or do I have to?
Well, people, does staff have a recommendation as far as?
You want to see a drawing of
procedure?
the fence to go along with what's already been submitted,
Yes, I believe so.
and then you've got
yes.
the green light.
So I could just, okay, so just add that to the drawing that I've given you.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
You want your survey?
Original drawing from my
Okay.
hand.
And any additional details on the material that you want to write down there, so we know you're using cedar or apple wood or whatever it is.
Yeah.
No particle board.
Yeah, I think that it should be a matter of record in the application, just so that we have it as a matter of record, the materials, you know, the height, the dimensions, and,
So I'll add that to
and
the
then that
drawings.
the TFS, yeah, just so that it's part of the application, that's all.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
That it?
Yes, sir.
You don't fly away.
Next item on the agenda is 7D, follow up to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission workshop. I had a conflict and was not able to attend, so I'm looking forward to receiving some information. Any commissioners able to be there?
I attended.
Yes,
Marika? Oh,
yes?
okay, I'll step aside and let the follow-up proceed.
Well, who included this? Was this, I wasn't sure what the follow-up meant. Was that a request for our comments? Was this going to be a follow-up on the part of our town manager as far as input from anything? I mean, I'm not sure where we got with this. Well, who's following up?
It would be Mr. Ballas.
Okay, thank you.
It was, Mr. Chairman, it was a stock item put on there because we were unsure how many members would be able to attend. So we just wanted the opportunity for those that did attend to inform members of the Historic Commission and Planning Commission as to what occurred, and mostly the agreement that there will be a combined committee of the two bodies to address design standards for those areas outside of the historic district, to create consistency and potential of a transitional zone, particularly in the more visible commercial corridors that mark the gateways to the town. That was based on input of tourists, some articles by reporters, just general comments from citizens, I think, over the past couple of months, including a group of citizens that Councilman Hunt meets with regularly, that if more of the town could look like the historic district, which is what people expect when they come here, rather than going through a barrage of backlit signs and neon first, it would probably create a better aesthetic, architectural overall presence for the community, both to folks that live here and tourists.
I very much agree with that and with that comment. And this was, these were items that were discussed, and Councilmember, Han also brought this up at the very beginning of the meeting, and I personally was very delighted to be in a meeting with P&Z ourselves in one room, because we do very often look at different aspects, and I think it is just crucially important that we work in concert together, because P&Z could very easily, they are looking at setbacks, at public safety, at construction standards, other things that we on the HPC look at. We really deal a lot with design standards and architectural, and that's what we deal with. And so many times people will feel that they just need an okay from P&Z, get that construction done, but wow, what happened to the design standards? And so, if we can work together that way and work towards integration, I think it'd be just a wonderful thing. And for me, it was really a landmark. I don't know, it's been years since P&Z and HPC got together in one room. I do thank our town manager for arranging that meeting, and I look forward to more of this periodically, especially some of the things that were discussions that were opened up. For instance, will and can we further, you know, the identity, the code that we have now? P&Z said, oh, you know, we're really pretty restricted when it comes to highway corridor. Well, I said, who writes the code for highway corridor? And P&Z said, we do. There you go. Would this not be a wonderful time to sit down and embellish on that code, all of us work together, enhance it, extend it, and further define it, so that we can address some of the issues that are uppermost on many people's minds, and that, you know, Councilmember Hahn brought up at the beginning of the meeting. How is it that certain buildings, you know, are showing up on the highway that might as well be anywhere else in the country? And so, and he gave us a rather dramatic example of someone from California who came to check out Taos for whatever reasons and stopped at the dollar store and made a U-turn and left. Now, I think that was a dramatic response on his part. He should have continued down the road a few more miles, but the point was made. And I think that we have it within our awareness and wherewithal to come together and define the look of our town and the entrance to our town. Yes, we can do that. So I thank everyone that participated, and I hope to see much more of this. I think it would be a wonderful, powerful thing when we all come together and work together to define this next chapter in Taos.
It was a very helpful meeting, a lot of very interesting dialogue. I'm a little cautious. I have some reservations about extending the type of restrictive covenants from a style point of view throughout the county. I'm not entirely convinced that's the right thing to do. My concern is you're going to get, Applebee's is a good example, you know, 5-year-old building with fake vigas tacked onto it and synthetic stucco. And if that's what you want, okay, it's not what I want for my town. I do think there needs to be an opportunity for a broader material palette and stylistic moves. I think there needs to be room for sensitive modern architecture in Taos. Maybe it's outside of the historic zone. What I got out of the meeting is really that you can do whatever you want stylistically, and I think that may always be the case. It's very difficult to regulate style, but where I think we have a great opportunity, and a lot of the power is with P&Z right now to do this. It's kind of out of our hands, but in my opinion, what needs to change is not the style of the buildings, but the zoning and the bigger picture. How dense can you be? I thought Chairman Palacios made a pretty good point that no matter what you do, NMDOT is going to want a 100-foot wide median for Highway 64. And that's not a very walkable, pedestrian-friendly environment. So, from my point of view, I would rather not focus on the style of the buildings. Although I think we can address certain things, I think it really needs to be brought back to more of a zoning realm where it's spatial and not stylistic. Certainly like to encourage more landscaping throughout that central business corridor, CBD, if that's what we're calling it. It's pretty tough to walk as a pedestrian or even ride your bike along the Sale as it heads south out of town towards Pinterest. And that was a big issue that was brought up at the meeting. I know why that is. That's a state highway, and NMDOT has certain requirements that they
Sure.
feel need to be met for safety reasons, and we're always butting heads with them. It's a big struggle. It's a lot of work to change all of that, and I really do have some reservations about extending the style of the historic zone throughout the remaining portions of the town. I think it's okay to recommend a palette of materials that's
Mhm.
acceptable, but it's not our role to tell everybody that they have to have Vigas
Mhm.
on their buildings, and everything has to be one style. I'm quite wary of that.
Well, I would like to respond that I completely support what you just said. I never in my mind had the idea that we are to extend the historic district down through highway corridor. There are always, in any point in time architecturally, reinterpretations of a certain time and place and culture. That's really what architecture is.
Absolutely.
So we're in concert with that. And I think that the focus is more about that awareness of a certain kind of quality and artistry and caring in what we do here, as opposed to the generic box that can be in Cleveland, Ohio.
Sure.
So, as well as here or anywhere else. And I think that was the thing to be mindful of. I think it's very important for a community in its continued vitality as a community and its growth, to echo the talent, echo the artistry, echo what Taos has always been about in various time periods. And that is very appropriate for now and the future. But it takes mindfulness, and it takes working together, and it takes planning. So I completely agree with Commissioner Henry's comments. I think the idea of creating quote-unquote a Disneyland version of Southwest architecture along the highway is not the way to go. Okay? And yet, that's where the work is. So where do we go? And yet Taos is special, continues with its specialness, and remains more vital than ever.
Mhm.
Where do we go? And that's the think work.
Yeah.
And, you know, we may very well need to relook at code that we have right now and integrate some of this into it.
Sure.
And it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it starts with mindfulness about what it really takes, and a step at a time, and the willingness to do that. So I agree completely. We should not be doing Disneyland here. We would just ace ourselves out. We really would. And that would be a terrible shame. We have tremendous talent here in Taos. We always have. We've been fortunate that is the type of thing that just grows here. And that talent should be used and implemented for whatever is that vision, you know, for our future. And in terms of architecture, absolutely. And more planned communities and green spaces, and it could go on and on. But let's get started. So that was the beginning, and that's why I was very happy to be at that meeting. I felt privileged, and again, I thank everyone for that. I would love to see this continue. Yeah. Let's do some good architecture.
Tall order.
Yeah.
My only inquiry, Rick, is, are there minutes forthcoming from that meeting, or is this what I've learned?
No.
You'll
There
be
will be
sending
minutes.
out some, okay, great, thank you. I look
Your
forward
meeting's great.
to
Your
looking
meeting minutes.
over that.
Okay.
And, yeah, I'm sorry they turned around at General Dollar, but that's the county.
Hey, if Family Dollar push the button, great. Yeah. The review
But that's
button. You know.
That's a good comments from the commissioners tonight on follow-up, and hopefully it will become something on an annual basis that we can get together and plot some strategy, some goals long-term to work together, not only with P and Z, but when the county gets around to their land codes and so on. I think that might be another possibility.
There's one thing that one of the applicants brought up that I just want to make a short comment about it. One of the applicants stood up and said, well, I don't know whether it's appropriate for HPC commissioners to comment on something here at this moment that is outside of the HPC. That's one of the first things that if we continue to work together in this way that I would like to address. Whether it's, on a, whether it's through a code amendment or this type of thing. Because we know what the historic overlay is, and we know what our domain is, and yet this was a different type of special meeting. So just a little bit of thought. I don't have any answers for that right now. That comment was made by one of the applicants, and of course we were there to all meet together and express and work together. But I would like to see some of that addressed perhaps in a more formal manner, so that there isn't some sort of doubt about, well, why is HPC here commenting on anything on the, further down the road on the historical, on the highway corridor, for instance. Yeah, I'd like to address that. Well, I'm not sure what the answer is yet, because we had a great informal meeting. That's what that was. No decisions were made. It was an informal meeting.
Okay, any other items to bring before us tonight?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to, as a point of public information, to state that we interviewed for a marketing and tourism director today and had two very good candidates from rather prestigious communities. We're interviewing tomorrow for senior planner, and we'll be interviewing on Friday for a director of planning, community, and economic development. We're hoping within 2 weeks to have public announcements in regards to all those positions. And
Excellent.
I think our candidates for the planning director position are three excellent people from top communities here.
Those staff members will all be within the same department?
That is the way it's envisioned at the current time.
Okay, I have a motion. Any matters from the commission? No? Okay. Motion for adjournment?
Second that?
I make a